Welcome back, everybody, to another Sunday Trialogue. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Ethan Indigo and Ricardo Calvario. Tell them what you've been working on, everybody.
Well, peace on earth. I am writing articles, trying to put together new books, and yeah, I wrote the Tao of Thoth and the Geometry of Energy for those are kind of the more popular ones, and yeah, always an honor to be here with you guys and communicate. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, you had a fire meme on Instagram with the Dow, and
Oh,
that was
That,
great.
that is hilarious. The people might recognize the in their minds the classic kung fu archetype meme guy that's dressed in white with the white beard overflowing, and it was I think a quote, but a variation of a quote from Lao Tzu: "The Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao." And it's spelled DOW as opposed to DAW, and it was what's her name, the blonde woman.
That
I forget.
Epstein shell, they all sort of blend together, don't they?
And she was down. She worked in Florida during the first state escapade that he had in Florida, where he got in criminal trouble.
Her
Excuse
entire
me.
career has been
Right.
covering
It seems like you could say so. Yeah.
Absolutely. Ricardo, what's up, buddy? How are
Hi.
you doing? What are you working on?
Well, we're working on finalizing the new edition of the Ferris magazine for the institute. Almost there. The team is doing a great job on that. And besides that, it's just crazy days with work from preparing the all the things that are coming from the institute. Uh, the testing of the copper that the people that are doing that are moving forward. The letters are already being sent to the museums. So let's see what the answer will come from them. We have a few from England and one from Italy. Not too trusty about the one in Italy, but at least I think that the ones in the UK are good choices. Uh, and it's just podcasting. So it's been a very very busy week, and my work. So but basically, because I still have to work to have my bread on the table. So on top of all of that,
Right,
so,
right. Well, I mean, once that paper gets reviewed and everything else, we're talking about changing the entire scope and focus of world history. I mean, that's big, you know. I mean, because once you get that flow copper analyzed, and they're like, there's no way we can work around this. There are definite problems with the amount of copper in Europe during the Bronze Age. They had to get it from North America. That just changes everything. You know, it
yeah.
shifts the focus away from, a lot of this crap about, the accepted narrative of history. And now it goes to something a little bit more genuine. So
Sure.
that's
But
big.
they mined the 1,100 tons and they have 100,000. So something is not right. It had to come from somewhere. So, but I had to do some concessions. I had to take all the material from my papers. Hi, Sarah. All the material from my papers mentioning transatlantic travel, mentioning UP area, or so, because otherwise it's just not, it's not usable even for those that are academics that are working with us. They cannot use that because, and they reach that point. Oh, no, what about Columbus? So that is taken even from the paper that is on now on Academia Do. So it lost 2 or 3 pages. Um, I made a synthesis of the three studies that I made. So I tried to show that from the mines there was not enough ore to produce the copper. From the environment, there was not enough trees if they were to process the 100,000 tons, because it's impossible in terms of environment. We know from paleo paleoenvironmental studies, it leaves samples of pollen on lakes and so on and so forth. So they know more or less how the deforestation happened for agricultural reasons, or for the and what papers say is that industry was at the very bottom of the list. In today, industry is at the top. It's the thing that takes more trees, right? Because we have other ways to build and so on and so forth. But back then, first was the people. So you had to have wood for fire, you have to have wood for heating, you have to have wood for tools, you have to have wood for building houses, construction, and after that it came the wood for industry. So they didn't have the mineral, they didn't have the wood to work for, so it has to come from somewhere. And the question is, you don't want to hear the answer, so you tell us, where did it come from? And what we're
Right.
trying to prove is it has to come from somewhere, so you tell us where it did come from. But just a final thing, you said we are not going to test UP nuggets. We are trying to test pieces from museums on the old world that have provenance and provenience. That's because that's where we failed the last time. No, we didn't fail. That's the pieces that they had, and that's the pieces that they tested. But those pieces were not found by archaeologists, or if they were, there were no papers about it. So now we're trying to pick up artifacts that are in museums in the old world, that we know exactly where they were found, who found them, when. It's documented by archaeologists, so they have provenance and provenience. That apparently is very important.
Right.
And if they present purity levels above 99.6, if they present, which I don't believe they will, but if they present mercury, there's only one place where copper has mercury, and it's in the UP. But the problem is that mercury disappears after 400, 500 degrees centigrade. So even to work the pieces, somehow they just give it a little bit of heat to make it a little bit more softer, and before they hammer it.
Yep. Mercury evaporates.
Yeah. But yeah, we're excited. We'll get the results in 1 month, probably, more or less. So we'll see. We'll see
Okay.
how it goes. And I just want to, as a last thing, just go and check Lost America series on Patreon. You will still have 10 episodes for free. Not sure how long you will. And after that, I think the subscription I paid either $5 or $6 a month, and you'll have access to the whole 6, 7, or 8 seasons that they have, and some perks. So go check that out. It's Lost America on Patreon.
All right. That's great. So I wanted to bring up cacistocracy. Are you guys aware of this term?
Does it come from cackling?
Is it
Sort
the
of.
thievery? Thieves in control?
It's close to thievery, but let me just bring up
I
this
forget what it is.
definition right
I
here.
will
So
use
this
a little bit.
rule by the worst, right? Rule by the absolute worst. So cac is the Greek word for, or Greek prefix meaning the worst. Least suitable.
What made you think this?
What's that?
Sorry, I was trying to say how out of the blue it is for you to think of this as a joke.
I don't think so. I think this goes straight back to the Epstein files.
I was being sarcastic. I was being sarcastic.
So we have a cacistocracy right now in the United States. And I think what a cacistocracy is, in essence, is the idea that you have a puppet government, right? So the worst people imaginable don't get to positions of power through their own strength, right? Because usually their strength is their weakness, right? So all of the weaknesses that they have get exploited to become these rulers, right? So they become the ultimate puppets, the worst, least virtuous people rising to the very top of society and ruling over everybody else. I think is the best example of how we are being ruled right now, because if you've noticed, they're more interested in protecting these, pedophiles at the very bottom of society. Everybody looks down on that group the reason why they are so integral to power is because of how easily manipulated people at the bottom are, because they have the most to lose. So kakistocracy, I believe, from my personal beliefs, it would be an indicator of being a puppet government. It's not genuine, not connected to the will of the people whatsoever. It is the rule by the worst. And if you're taking an objective measure, I think the vast majority of people believe that having pedophiles rule your country is the absolute worst state of affairs you could be in. They don't care about children. They don't care about the future. And what do we see with all of these politicians? They're incredibly old. They're all on the verge of death, and they have no replacements, right? So in addition to being liars and thieves and all the rest of the things you could call them, they don't have any replacements. They can't bring up anybody behind them because they are so compromised that anybody coming up behind them would realize that and see exactly how bad they are. So they're not interested in the future. They're only interested in maintaining their power. And you see this in the myth of Kronos or Saturn, right? So he was so concerned about preserving his own power, he ate his own children to maintain it.
Yeah.
And this is where we're at today. We're sacrificing the future for these disgusting kakistocrats. What are your thoughts?
Thank you so much for bringing this to the table, Atlas. It's a great word. It's a great provocative thought, and words are like the language for the map of life, right? If you don't have what is it called? Not the index. What the symbols on the map mean is the language. I forget the word right now. I'm talking about the word, not the glossary. It'll come to someone, or maybe me. But if you have the language, then you can read the map. And so thank you for bringing this important word, because it's very much like they have taken what I was going to bring to the table today, of course, is similar to this because of what's going on. The individuals in control, they will use rhetoric and philosophy and intellectual learning and so forth as a manner to control and lie and manipulate, rather than as a manner to develop themselves and thus others. I have one little document here, but I also have let's see if I can bring the image up. This I found in the Epstein files, and it was, oh wow, did it get deleted?
My God, you've been hacked?
Yeah.
No, it's somehow I can't bring it up. That's odd. I can't bring it up through this means.
Of course you can't. You're acting against the system. What do you expect? You can't bring it up. It's headless. It's at the head of the censorship.
It's so,
double agent.
Head of the snake. Look out.
Anyway, maybe I can share it somehow else.
If you give me a keyword, I can pull it up in Gmail.
Okay. It was an email to himself about manipulating information. Let's see if I can bring it up and find a keyword on it through this other means here. I apologize, but it was literally presenting the context that I'm talking about in an example. As far as he was philosophizing about, oh, there it is. Funny that it's
you got it
to pull up that way. So let's see here. Let's see. There's a quite amazing reference here. I'll read this, and maybe there's two keywords put together: hallucinations, allegations, and it should come right up. And I'll read it. It's a really astounding mannerism to lie. And it just really exemplifies this perversion of taking these self-development lessons and using them to control others. Here's the quote. If these things had been said during her sleep, they would commonly be referred to as dreams. If while awake, hallucinations. But said to a reporter, they are now referred to as allegations. Like, yo, wild way to. Did you find it?
I don't know. I pulled up hallucinations.
So yeah, you can
DNA being fundamental to consciousness. This is weird.
So it just is him contemplating this idea about lying. Here's another one. On a close inspection, instead of the more common caption based on a true story, a fictionalized account of true events, these should be captioned based on a fictionalized story, a true account of total fabrications. Another one here. Sex, royalty, money, power, an age-old set of standard ingredients for popular fiction. So you can see how they're trying to diminish the witnesses, which I'm not saying all witnesses are correct or truthful necessarily, but surely most, I think, have some credibility. And also just taking the whole situation and mocking it. Sex, royalty, money, power. Great story. So that's that. This is Jeffrey Epstein, but I would say that this is a commonplace perversion of learned people, right? Like a true, learned person is going to teach lessons rather than distort them and hold people down, right? Did you find it or?
No, but I found one that you might like. This was from Jeffrey Epstein to Deepak Chopra. Now, if you know about what's been going on, he got his conference canceled, and he's like canceling all appearances because of these emails where he's talking with Jeffrey about the personal.
He's like sucking up to him the whole time.
Yeah, he is. So this is what Jeffrey says. He says, I thought you might like the fact that the game theory people propose the I is merely the social response to communication with others. They point to you, you are the subject, and assume an I. Please note. It makes sense. The personal I, which is socially induced hallucination. There is, however, a non-local, impersonal center of experience awareness which observed simultaneously co-arise and subside in every moment of now. There is an observer born within every observed experience. Chopra Foundation, blah, 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 Center for Wellness. So he's directing him to his website and saying, come here, Jeffy. But here's the big thing that I see here. The personal I is socially induced hallucination. So what they're saying is identity only exists in contrast.
And it serves the perverted elitists to subvert individuation of others. You don't have a allegation, you have a dream. You have an hallucination. And it's all very dark. The funniest really sucking up phrase that is kind of scary that Deepak supposedly sent to Epstein: God is a construct, cute girls are real. Yikes. You sent to a pedo? Holy shit.
Yeah, Deepak, I don't think you're coming back, buddy.
Real. Man. Oh, man.
You don't recover from that one, buddy. I mean, if you talk about all of these gurus and all of these new age types, like they're very different behind the scenes from what they appear on stage. And this is the perfect example of that. They're just.
It might have been Gandhi, but no. it fails me who said this right now, but maybe it actually was Young. Every man has two reasons for why he does something: the one he tells you and the real one.
Right. And Gandhi, that was a real character too. I mean, he was doing things with young
An
people.
example of this dualistic kind of freak.
Right.
In control, in trying to be control. He probably did a lot of good in a sense. He inspired a lot of people at the very least. He freed a country from this control system they had. But yeah, he had his own control system, right?
Right. Well, I think these guys doing Gmail are doing everybody a big service because it's so easily searchable. Yeah, we can't find anything, but there's 3.5 million emails that they've released. Now, people like Alex Jones say, that's it. They've released them all, but we know that there are about 6 million files. And so what we're showing here are the crumbs. These are not the real indictments, right? All of the stuff that is real is still behind the paywall of access that the American government is keeping.
And we can see a pattern of information withholding regarding to potential abusers or friends or whatever they may have been with Epstein, right? We can see information restriction. And that goes to something I wanted to share. I think it's worthwhile. It's all about information. I think the fairest way to understand someone, not judge someone, is through information, and not necessarily the information that they're presenting, how they react or respond to information. Idiots won't accept information. They remain ignorant, and zealots, they will accept information to confirm their belief system and no others. Elitists, as we see exemplified in this whole Epstein process and in the presentation of the files, elitists hold and withhold information to maintain or gain power.
Right.
And then patriots, they share information. Right. And we can see these four roles as it plays out in the allegory of the cave as well. And I wrote about that on my Matrix of Four website, if anyone wants to check it out, the allegory of the cave in 1984 and the idiots, zealots, and elitists. Headless, please.
Right. Well, this is going straight to what you're talking about. This is access journalism. Have you ever heard this term? It's talking about a reporting style that prioritizes maintaining close, exclusive relationships with powerful sources, politicians, celebrities, or corporate leaders over maintaining strict objectivity. By trading critical coverage for insider access, journalists often produce stories that reflect the source's narrative rather than independent investigations. So whenever they say sources say, they're the source often, and it's their access that they're trying to protect, right? So we have access journalism, we have access corporations, we have access politicians, and the entire idea is about maintaining their relationships at all costs. There is nothing that they prioritize more than those relationships, not truth, not objectivity, nothing like that. Distinct from accountability, it contrasts with outside in or investigative reporting. So this is why you're not seeing anything about Epstein on the evening news, because they're done talking about it. That's it. Whatever it is to maintain power, as opposed.
We can see this taking place in the Trump administration overtly above the surface. Often this takes place more behind the scenes in more subtle manner, but Trump literally asks every person, "Who are you with?" This does not matter. This never mattered before. And he also changed the whole press room into more sycophantic personnel than reporters, not journalists asking tough questions.
Right. But, every administration kind of has that as well. They always like to keep their access journalists close. This is the White House press corps and all the rest of the stuff. And really under the first Trump administration, we see that the access started to shift. right? So he was constantly at war with the press, only to keep the press on his side. And he wanted to maintain sort of the access patronage network that existed under the Obama network, right? But all of this stuff has to do with maintaining relationship networks as opposed to actually getting truth out there. And it's the same with every administration. It's the same with all power. People suck up to power. So Ricardo, you posted this to the private chat. Let's see what do we got here. Oh, you're muted.
I have no idea why I was muted. I didn't mute myself, but I might have done it by accident. What I was saying is, this is an interesting place in France that anybody can visit, and I put the link there just so you can share the images. I think if you click the first image, then it will scroll through all of them. That's the headline. Maybe the next one. I'm not sure if you can go from the headline because it's an article. Oh, you can.
Yeah.
So this is an actual a national park, then you can go, right? And it's highly ignored by archaeologists that say there's nothing to be there, to see there. Although there is a cave where they found up to 20,000 years of activity there. There are some interesting petroglyphs. But what I find interesting about this forest is if you keep going through the images, I think that we all see, so this is more images of the area where it is in France. This is the cave. So in the cave we find different styles that go up to 20,000 years, so that they occupied and cultures change and they kept occupying the area. But to me, what is most impressive, it's not the cave, it's what they done. So they consider this to be one of the oldest maps because apparently it describes the whole area, the rivers, like they had a school there teaching where to go and where to hunt and everything that is there. It's a whole stone in the floor that
It's set up like in quadrants.
Yes,
Is that what's
it's
going on?
all divided, all explained. What is river, what is mountain, what is so on and so forth. But it's the work that's been done on the park itself that people go about and don't notice. So this is still from the cave. You see this anthropomorphic figure, very interesting,
And it's got the upside down triangle.
and the cross hatching. That is something that apparently is worldwide. It's not limited to one place. Anytime they wanted to show something had spiritual or magical value, they created this cross hatching.
Cross hatching. And what's interesting about that too is if you've ever done mushrooms, you'll notice the geometric patterns that start to emerge in your vision as a result of the drugs. And so that cross hatching pattern could be a reference to that geometric vision.
This is the stone that we are watching.
And that looks a lot like a omphalos stone, right? So the navel of the world.
It could be. Although also, I think it also shows that they were matriarchal because it looks like a woman in position of some kind of power. This might be included. So look, this very curious imagery there.
Wow.
They made two studies, and this is the image where it starts to get interesting. So zoom into that and tell me, when you go about that forest, look at the amount of work that was done to create mythical figures. So this is how they are today, or more like 10 years ago, more so, after the erosion.
Wow.
Snakes. We see all sorts of mythical
turtles.
creatures. Wow. If you get a chance, Kareem, come visit this site, Fontainebleau in France. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I'm trying to get people to go there and show me aqua photographs because I can't find other sources because the academics don't take pictures of this.
Right. They're looking at the cave stuff, and they're not looking at the actual garden of
No.
mythical
So,
creatures.
but we know that in the 18th and 19th century, this was a favorite place for artists to go and paint. That's why the
Wow.
first image is the painter himself painting these things. But you can go page after page after page with these sculptures. This is just one
There's
of the pages.
this remind. I mean, these are much more artwork oriented too, but it reminds me of the indigenous Americans had certain ways to present mapping ideas in their natural features. They would change trees to point to water and set up things that pointed to
Yeah,
where the deer were.
market trees that they still do it today. When the market tree falls down, there is someone mysteriously that comes up unseen and plants a new tree and starts modifying the new tree to replace the old tree. It's still being done today, although most archaeologists say that market trees don't exist, but there are lots of documentation about it. I myself followed a half-fallen market tree. I imagine it more or less where it would be if it was standing, and I followed that direction. And man, in less than 5 minutes, I discovered a very special place. So
Oh man, look
th-
at this one right here.
These
this
remind me of certain mapping kind of orientation ideas, anyway, like that.
this place is just I need someone to get me pictures so that I get from 90% to 100% sure that it is real, because it's just,
How big is the area?
oh, you saw in the beginning, it's a natural park, it's a
Huge.
huge area.
Wow, look at this one. Well, I think this brings up a lot of the fairy lore too, right?
Yeah,
So we've got all of these different stones with faces on them that are associated with some type of personality or spirit in the region.
and they don't know who did this.
Hmm.
They know who's been on the cave, more or less. The cave was documented, but that's the only thing, and the cave is on one extreme of the park. This is the whole park,
Right.
and
You
it's
could
it's a
spend years documenting this stuff.
and
Wow.
it's not just the shape that makes a face or an animal, is the scaling of the stone. They created the skin
Right.
of these things on the stone itself.
It brings up an interesting point. So sculptors talk about how they're not actually removing stone; they're revealing the stone within.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That
so
I don't know
there's
who
that.
was the famous sculptor that said, "I don't create anything. I just reveal what's hidden inside the stone." So what was already inside when he does the sculptures.
Look at this one right here.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But yeah, this really does bring up the idea that maybe they're connected to a spiritual realm, and sort of. I always say that land is the lens by which we view God, and these structures represent sort of an immortal spirit of the place. And so, by removing some of the overgrowth and some of the parts of it that are superfluous, you're revealing the spirit or the nature of the thing itself.
But then, if you talk to archaeologists, they would say you can take the moss off the stone to see what's underneath, because if you take the moss, then we cannot date it. But since they don't take the moss, they never date it, and we never see
Right.
what's there. We never actually go and see what's the moss is hiding. That's the word.
Well,
So
it seems like such a magical place. All of
it's
this stuff has a natural magical quality to it that I think a lot of archaeologists will never really understand, because it's not something that you can really contemplate outside of subjective experience.
well, I looked. There's not one single reference to these sculptures. One. There's not one. Only
Wow.
the cave was documented, because some of these stones are so old that they don't want to go there. That's the only explanation I have. They are, because they show marks of erosion that can be 50, 60, 70, 80,000 years old. And it shows that these people had a concept of art and imagination that they don't want us to recognize. I don't know why. It's just unbelievable.
Well,
And
I
it's
mean, it makes sense. It makes sense from a scientific perspective. It doesn't make sense from a spiritual perspective, and they don't really accept that spiritual perspective at all. From the science perspective, it's like, well, all of this is, what do they call that? Where you assume a face in something, you're pattern recognizing when there is none. What's that called?
I forget right now.
Right, but you know the concept I'm talking about. It's just, mistaken perspective. That's clearly a rabbit, though. I'm sorry. And yeah, so it would make sense why this cave would exist in this area, because it's highly associated with the connection to the spirit of these stones, right? So what they're mapping out inside the cave is related to the sculptures outside of the cave.
and
And we've
completely
got,
different. They cannot be associated with one with the other. They are completely different.
right.
The only
Right.
thing that is maintained is the cross hatching and the squaring and the lines. But
It's so funny because we have places in America, for instance, what's it called? There's a place in Tennessee. It's Lookout Mountain, I believe it is, but they've got all of these stones all over the place that look like faces at Lookout Mountain. And what they do is, it's a tourist trap. They're bringing people in based off of the faces in the stone. Why wouldn't they be doing that back then? If you're looking at it from a purely anthropological point of view, that makes sense too. That's why this is a holy site.
And it's just to your point, it just shows you how powerful art is and how intrinsic artistry is to being human.
and this is thousands of years of work, because you could spend a lifetime just creating, modifying one stone. I'm not saying that they created. I'm not trying to say that they created the stone. They used the stone that was there and just modified, and that's what they don't want to admit in America, that there are stones that are natural, but they have been somehow modified by the indigenous peoples to represent something. And they don't want to assume that. For instance, yesterday we are on the Roundtable Chronicles that people can go and watch on the Institute for Natural Philosophy channel, YouTube. Uh, there were innumerous mounds and representations of what looked like proboscideans. Proboscideans meaning elephants, mammoths, mastodons. There were mounds that were mound elephants discovered by T.S. Lewis, and they mapped it. Only one survived in paper, and there are only two now, because the rest, the Smithsonian hired people to just go there, and they had no elephants because they couldn't be that at that
Right.
age. They couldn't be there, right? So they're all the traditions count for nothing. Even there is this stone that is called the elephant stone that really has this mammoth. Uh, the skull rises, and then you have the trunk all the way to the floor, and it's right by a highway, and no one cares about it, because they just say it's just a coincidence that nature made it. Although never seen so much concentrated as in one place like here in France. It's just unbelievable. And here you see the first one. If you go to the first one, you see the painter. He's painting himself. That's the actual painter. He's painting himself, painting these rocks, because this was one of the favorite places for them to go and paint in the 19th century.
Man, it just goes to show that, this intelligence that we have is all sort of derived from what we see. So it's the imagination and the connecting of these dots, whether or not they're real or not, that we put into art that ends up being transferred to future generations and giving people the idea, the ability to imagine beyond the physical reality, whereas our scientific experience is just the opposite. Right?
If
You can't imagine outside the physical reality. That's not allowed.
if we follow the idea that you were exposing at beginning with the psychotropics, no matter what they are, imagine this whole area could be an initiation area, because you take the psychotropic and then you navigate for all of these mythical creatures, right? You have this man-looking creatures. You have the animals of various sorts and types, and you go across this. It's like navigating the landscape and going through all these ancestor spirits and totems, and it would be something truly life-changing to see these gigantic figures, these gigantic snakes, right? And, the thing is, I've seen places when I was diving deep into archaeoacoustics. I found a cave where, to this day, they are performing rituals that include chanting and sound and so on and so forth. And people that do that, they just thank you. Can you?
Yeah, you're welcome. Of
Can
course.
Can you
Repost
go
it,
back?
guys.
Can you go back in the article? Just go
Yeah.
back to the source of the articles. No.
Oh.
On the top, go to
Uh-huh.
my articles. To my list of articles. No. On the top, you said article. You go back. You see
Oh,
the
okay.
top.
Yeah. That's my
Oh
stuff.
no. Okay. I can do it on my. Click on my name and then articles. It's easier. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now
There
go
we go.
for articles. Down a little bit.
Articles. There we
Down
go.
articles. Yeah. Scroll down until you see a huge snake on stone.
Snake
Keep
on the
going.
stone.
Yeah, keep going, keep going.
Mount Pisgah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's a good
yeah.
one.
Now we have the chief of the Cherokee interested. It is in the speech. He said, "Give us our bear," which
Right.
which Vincent, because they don't want to show. Keep going, keep going. It will be go down and down and down.
This is just gold, guys. If you're not on his page looking through these articles, you're wrong. Look at all of this wealth of knowledge. Look at that. Oh, I love it. The dragons, how they're associated with water and horses.
This is another interesting place. You see La Pena de los Namorados. It's a face looking. Everybody's talking about the face on Mars. How about this one?
Right.
This is exactly the same concept, but you can go further down. Just keep on going till you see a huge snake. I hope it's not the first one on the list.
It might be. But look
Going.
at this. Resonant Secrets.
It might be that one. Go up a little bit.
Down this one right here. Resonant Secrets of Piraquinto, an acoustic and cultural analysis. This one?
Yeah, it might be that one. I might be confusing with the one with the snake. Let me just read a little bit about it.
Pareidolia is that word.
Pareidolia, there we go.
Yeah.
But pareidolia is what it does is it expands the mind. Pareidolia literally expands the mind. Now you're making associations outside of physical reality and you're expanding your imagination. Right?
Art does that, right? Too.
Right, exactly. But this is the thing. It's like all these different sectors of society hate that kind of learning because it leaves it up to the viewer. And the only people that are talking about that kind of perspective are the artists.
And the materialists.
I found it and I'm going to send you the link here in the private chat. It's easier.
All right.
The broader sense, the materialism influence on things, they don't consider a reason for existence having to do with art. They were only subsisting and that's all they were doing. No, obviously not. They everywhere we see humans, they're making things.
Right. And they're making things based off of how their imaginations are expanding. This is how we get to invention, is by expanding the imagination. That's how you invent things, right? That's how you solve problems. And it's looked at as being such a bad thing. All you have to do is mark it as such. It's like this is expanding your imagination and bringing closer to, what you can possibly do. Ooh, look at that. This is pareidolia, guys. That was not carved. But the coils of the serpent, being related to legs. I was talking about this last night on the Rustic Gods. A lot of these giants had snakes for legs. Does that go into some of this lithography as well? I mean, there's something to the idea of these giant stone snakes that is, really relevant to that.
You have to see that this is another of the perversions created by religion, because snake is the oldest religion in the world that we have documented, right? But all of a sudden came this text saying that the snake fooled the woman and the woman fooled the man, and all mankind suffers ever since because of what the snake said, right? But until that point, the snake was exactly what they perverted. It was a symbol of knowledge, of relation with nature, of
Transformation.
transformation, the losing of the skin, symbolizing the rebirth, the ability to change yourself.
Healing.
But what I was saying in terms of that article, that cave, is that there is still a priest, a shaman today that does ceremonies there, right? And when they tested in archaeoacoustics the cave itself, they noticed that it have a profound effect on people. It helps to reach high states of meditation. It allows that sensation of communion with the divine, which means it has some infrasound around the 4 hertz of non-compressed waves. But when they asked the shaman about, do you know that this is caused by the way this cave is, and the chants that you chant that are very old, and he said, no, I have no idea that is the chanting that and the sound that does that. And
Right.
I was, and after reading all of that, I was wondering, does this guy doesn't want to talk about the mystery itself, that is the music and the space that create this effect on consciousness, on the brain, on the tuning by frequency and so on? Or is it the knowledge actually lost on that part of the world? Is really the shaman have no idea that by following the chanting that he received from his forebears, that he's prolonging the ritual with the exact tune or frequency that creates the effect of people inside the cave, right? It's to me, it's a mystery. Either he's hiding it and he's playing a part that, no, I have no idea that is the same causing, or is he completely oblivious about it? I found it very interesting, and that's why I wrote the article about it, because the place works and the chants work, because they tested with the chants that he used during the ceremonies. But it's a knowledge that, although we are still doing these things, the knowledge has been lost. If he doesn't actually know that is the sound that is creating that, by perpetuating the same chants that he was taught by his ancestors, he's continuing to do the ritual as it is intended to be, but he has no idea why. And I think that's happened a lot in the megalithic world. So after, like in Iberia, after 4,000 years of peace and receiving the effects of all of these megaliths, the effects they have on people, the effects they have on the nature around them, because the difference between a megalith and a church that is, or a chapel that is placed where the megalith used to be, is that the church would concentrate 90% plus of that energy inside the church. And the megalith had the energy inside, or the effect inside, and spread it all around the land. So there are these tales of even the animals were somehow dosed inside those areas. They were easy to hunt. The relationship with animals was much stronger because the animals were somehow in tune to listen from humans, and vice versa. It's like we can talk to animals. You see, those ideas that we could talk to animals come from this effect, this perpetual frequency modulation coming from these megaliths that affected the whole area, even the weather. If you go and look to the pyramid, there's some tests showing that the pyramid affects the weather, when there was a weather to be affected. Now it's desert. There's not much it can do.
Well,
But
I think it brings into play the idea of resonance, right? When you reach the resonance point, do you have to know why you've reached that point or not? Right? So when you're reaching resonance with a site, you just know that it works. You've hit a button that is now working. And, people put far too much emphasis on method as opposed to, actually experience. Method is different from experience. This is where you have to explain the experience. Whereas when it comes to experiencing something, you don't have to know why it's working. You just have to know that it's working. So a lot of what we're doing is trying to explain the method when the people experiencing it, they don't have to know anything about the methodology. All they have to do is know that it's working.
Sure.
And so a lot of science gets bogged down and bottlenecked in the idea of explaining methodology. In a lot of ways, if you don't have to know how it works, but you just don't know that it does, they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah. And the question people are very turning to Egypt and how this marks. So look at that snake head. How did they carve the mouth? What in the Stone Age did they have to create that? Right? Was it with sinew that they cut the stone there? Was it the stone already cracked there and they just used the rest? Right?
Right. Or did they find it like that and it works?
Because imagine you come to a ceremony and the first thing you see is this gigantic head of it looks like a Conan movie, right? You remember the Conan movie with the snake coming out?
Exactly.
Or
That's
even
where the idea from, right? Is like there's so many megalithic sites that have to do with snakes. It's like you put that in the Conan movie and it just fits because that's sort of the time period, this sort of, early Chalcolithic, which, doesn't make sense for why you would have a steel sword, but
even the Chamber of Secrets, the snake coming out of the space. So it's something that we perpetuate in our pop culture without giving the actual meaning and fandom the meaning that it had 20,000 years ago. It's just
And that's why I think the monotheistic teachings have made snakes in correspondence with negativity and evil, right? Because they wanted to get rid of the old bad ways, right? They have the new good way.
you can pareidolia snakes anywhere. And so you're not supposed to do that. You're only supposed to go to the book.
yeah. But in this case, if you say that this is pareidolia, then please go speak somewhere else because it's
Well, that's the thing too, is like,
this is a snake.
is pareidolia a methodology of connecting with the spirits? Because you found something that has a sort of essence that you can recognize, right? And that recognition brings a different state of mind. It's imagination changes our states of mind. That's how we change our mental states, is through imagination. And so this is the first key to really unlocking a deeper part of our brains, is that imagination. And now we're told that that's, evil and that's wrong, and it's tempting you away from the book.
Not to mention that if you look at this image, I would not put it past the possibility that the body of the snake that we see here, it's not native there. It was pushed into that hole to fit. So someone used a huge block, push it to that crevice in there, and then finish the carving, and then put it there. You could see at the bottom it was clearly not perfectly, but it was clearly broken in order to make the head be going up.
Right. Look
So
at all these marks. Look at all these marks right in here. That's human made right there. That's
all of
not
that. All of
natural.
that.
Right.
That's a huge amount of work
Yeah.
in very hard stone.
Right.
And they even made the horn. There is some snakes that have that little horn. They made the small proboscis that is from an ancient snake.
Right. Snakes have a stick tooth. They have a tooth that helps them get out of their shells.
Exactly.
And there's something really deeply mystical about that as well when you think about the Orphic egg. So the snake tooth is the thing that allows you to break into the universe. That's really interesting. So
yeah, it's just an amazing place that most people are not aware of. And these are representations of snakes through history.
Right. and the intertwining of snakes. This is how snakes mate, by the way, is they wrap around each other just like this.
By the thousands.
Right?
And there's the snake mound in the Americas. Who knows how many other similar ones they destroyed that we didn't know about.
Well,
Right.
you have most people know about Serpent Mound.
Serpent mound,
But
excuse me.
yeah, but in Ohio, but that is made of and is an earth mound, right? But I found several papers showing immense snake-like figures that are miles long, right?
Right.
But they are made of stone. Pile of stones, like stones this big, all piled to create like a wall that goes and serpentines through the land and finishing sometimes in a open mouth. And those have been mostly destroyed. They are unrecognized because it's so vast that we just look a pile of stones. Oh, it's just a pile of stones dividing land, right? But if you follow it, you see that it has a beginning and it has an end, and it clearly represents a snake. And there are 2 or 3 papers showing some of those stone walls that probably are destroyed by railways, road making, urbanization, because they are just not recognized by what they are. Right? It's not the same thing that happened to the elephant mounds, that they were just deliberately destroyed because they couldn't known about the elephant because they are not that old. It's a matter of development, and things are just erased. But
Right.
it's a fascinating place. This huge snake coming out of that hole is just it caused an impression of me. It's one of the biggest that I've seen.
Right. And there are sites in Indonesia where the entire mountain is sort of wrapped around by this sort of snake-like, scaly stone that is representative of that. They've called it Snake Cave for thousands of years, and people don't think of it as a holy site. They're just like, oh, more pareidolia. But I think pareidolia is kind of the gateway that leads you to an imaginal realm. And this is where you get the idea of the mage in the first place, is your ability to imagine and your ability to keep these thoughts in your head and sort of expand your vision at the same time. These are not contrasting elements of the spiritual experience. I think half of all the spiritual experience is ourselves and our own perspective. And the other half is the finger of the divine coming down to show you that there is something outside of yourself.
And I think it's also somehow related to matriarchal society that they wanted to eradicate, right? And this is way before the Greeks. They just needed to eradicate matriarchal societies that seem to be much more nature oriented, life oriented, mystic oriented, than the matriarchal that just looked at, I'm serving the gods and I'm its representative, and I'm the sole force or the sole power of law or rulership. And,
Right.
and that change, I think, eradicated most of this snake culture. So, which is interesting because in the Bible we see that it is the snake that also caused the massive transformation of what was to be a human in this world. So you stop having everything given to you by nature, that is this nature oriented perspective, way of life, and then have to extract from nature everything you want to. You have to till the land. You have to work, and the work then is able to be taxed, and part of it is be able to be given to a lord. And I think it's all somehow connected. That's the mystic.
It's the control of fertility.
Yeah.
Right? Fertility control. And fertility control, again, like all polytheistic societies believe that nature is perfect in its ability to create, and that's why the gods created reality through fucking, right? And so when you understand that perspective, you understand why fertility control is so important, because when you've got fertility control, that controls the imagination as well. A fertile imagination is something that they're sort of trying to condense and keep within the box, right, of imagination. under control. We have to control the imagination. So the Orphic egg is the symbol for the beginning of life. And you could see why that snake tooth would be so important for opening up the imagination, right? And in a lot of ways, hallucinogens could be that snake tooth to get you outside of that egg.
This all reminds me too of Fuzi and Nuwa. And if you could Google them, if and when you're done, Headless,
Sure.
They have a cool image of masculine and feminine unity in NUWA and
NUWA.
and
it's food.
and you. Everything in China is food. But they come together in a masculine and feminine with the snake bodies. And in any thinking, how do you and they're holding the Masonic symbols that we traditionally associate with Masonry of the compass and square, the feminine and masculine symbols obviously coming together there in sacred geometry. And these spaces too, with the snakes and so forth, they're very liminal. They make every space sacred and unifying the physical and the metaphysical. It's one of their, I was going to say too, the Ashura, they got rid of the feminine in the foundation of modern day Judaism and Christianity, where there was just one God who was alone, right? They got rid of his feminine counterpart, and they presented a trinity of Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, yet no mom.
Right.
They got rid of the matriarch, the feminine at every step of the game.
But are you talking about the present? Because men can get pregnant, apparently.
Yes, we have to remember that. But the power of the feminine to create life is sort of seen as not as holy as the power of the masculine to impose will. Right. And so when you think about reality, you've got space and time, and they refer to, time as the masculine, but kind of forget that space would be feminine, right? The egg, the surface, the interior, all of that idea of space is translated into these temples, right? And these temples, these holy sites would be condensation.
Yeah.
There you go, right? So once you put together the idea of Father Time and Mother Space, then you have the whole of reality sort of at your fingertips, but all we're given is Father Time. And Father Time is incomplete without Mother Space. These two ideas go together, and that's how you create resonance, is the pounding of the drum over time within a space that now resonates that chamber.
And we see it again and again and again. Even if you go, people are like Egypt. So I go to the Osirum. You have an entrance that takes you into complete darkness. You go through a tunnel that is the descent to the underworld, or is the walk into death, if you want to. And then they are put inside a stone box that they call sarcophagus, but it's a stone box. You're put in there during the night. You have to survive in there, probably very high with something that they gave you.
Right.
And before the crack of dawn, they go in there, they take you out, and you emerge through the water into the light. And this is what you see everywhere that are these initiation rituals, is going to darkness, spend the night inside something that is where you can't see anything, and then you are brought into life again through the water, because the Osiron has the lake that goes right into the east. You pass through the lake, and you have this wide view into the east afterwards. So you come through the water into the light, and that's giving birth. You come through the water from the inside to the light outside. That's exactly the same thing. So they might have eliminated the feminine, but they still use the concept of birth to create initiation. Even in the right initiation well in Sintra, and you'll find, and I've been in there. You'll find that they would go down this spiral stairway with the complete symbology of the Templar and Masonic traditions at the bottom. When you reach the bottom, interestingly, you have a huge shell, stone carved as a shell, with a fountain of water where they would purify themselves. And then they had to traverse the tunnels to come into the light through a waterfall.
Right.
So, and this was done in the 1900s. Of course, I think that the inverted towers, as they call, they're not wells, they are inverted towers. Towers, instead of going up, go down into the earth. There are two of them. And I think they existed before this individual that buy the land and transform it completely to create a highly symbolic property. They were already there. Then they are one of the reasons why the Templars wanted that area, because
Right.
there is so many tunnels in there, right? And it's, as I said many times, it's the only place where the Muslims and the Templars, the armies, didn't fight. The Muslims just said, "Look, here is the key." We don't know what he delivered, but we know that the chief mystic of the Muslims gave to Gualdin Pais, that was the leader of the Templars in Portugal, and one of the ones that caused the creation of the country itself. He gave him something. It's documented. He received that from the mystic priest of the Muslims, while all the Muslims that were in the castle went down a tunnel that it's still there, and the tunnel goes almost, it's about 4.5 miles long, but it goes all the way the mountain, so 600 meters. I don't know how much that is in feet. 600 meters down, and then about 4.5 miles under the ground to emerge in a cave in a completely different locality. That has, you see, when you emerge, the mountain is far away. It's a huge structure that is still there, and the place where they came out is still called the Well of the Moors, because it has a well right in front of that cave. But they say the cave is extremely dangerous. Don't go there. In fact, you have buildings in Sintra that you go to take a coffee, and you look, this is carved stone. Where I am, not the entrance, but inside the building, it's carved stone. And then you see a barred gateway. And if you ask the person that is serving you, what is that? Oh, is that just one of the doors for the tunnels inside the mountain that they consider are dangerous? So everything is closed. So you go about the mountain and you find lots of these entrances. They are barred. They have iron gates or that you can go through, because the whole mountain is a Swiss cheese underneath, and no one knows who built that, right?
So I had a interesting idea. So what if the Bronze Age was a counterfeit age? Right? So in earlier civilization, they talk about this in Greek, that they had orichalcum, which was a legendary alloy. And what if bronze was a imitation of the orichalcum? Right? And so this is why people were really interested in bronze, even though they had iron available, because they were trying to do a callback to this earlier age of orichalcum.
Well, they would answer that saying that even if iron was available, they didn't have the technology to melt it, because their furnaces and their kilns couldn't go above 1200, 1300 degrees, right? Which were perfect for copper ore, but it's still not hot enough for the iron, right? Which to me it's ridiculous, because iron can be done in a different place. There is people have already put this in the comments many times, but I still can't remember how they call this mud square that look like huge sarcophagus furnaces, where Japanese still today make their tamahagane that they use then to the swords. So It's a high carbon steel, as good as any industry, the best in the industry can produce today. But orichalcum is highly described in Timaeus and Critias by Plato when he's talking about it. And they apparently now found a boat with this. I don't know if this is from the boat, what you're showing here today, but I read some news that they found a boat with what they thought is orichalcum in it.
Right. So, I mean, look, I think there's so many different callbacks to a lost civilization that, to me, it kind of makes sense why they would be focused on this thing as opposed to bloom iron, which I think they were able to process. If you've ever seen the process of making bloom iron, it's not that complex. They say, oh, they couldn't get it up to a certain degrees. They could get it up to a certain degrees with clay and skins of an animal. All you need is skins of an animal and clay, and you can make your own iron at home. Right? It's that simple. I don't think that they were that stupid. If they could understand how to process and get all the impurities out of copper, they could make iron pretty easily. But I think it was a callback, like, a mental sort of hang up on going with this as a symbol of royalty.
And is it all that, and the fact, for instance, we had CDs for at least 2 or 3 years before they were introduced in the market. Why? Because there were warehouses of floppy disks and 3.5 quarter diskettes to be sold. Only when that threshold was overcome, where it no longer a huge loss in money, then CDs were then brought into the market. There were still diskettes because they could still sell a few, but they waited until their stocks were depleted to a point where they can now introduce a new product. So in the case of orichalcum, in the case of copper, in the case of bronze, in the case of iron, following the scheme, is it not a market control of what they have to sell and what is told us that is good to buy or is the material to have, right? It could have been just a control source, because we know that someone has went to the Americas way before the Copper Age, and someone saw what the indigenous peoples described to us as entire cliffs with float copper on their edge, because when the earth separated and created the cliff, this was all copper, pure copper, 99.9% pure copper, no mining, no oring. It's just hot water and fire to separate the fire and cold water to crack the stone and separate this huge amounts of copper.
Right. So and they were using iron as compasses way before the smelting of iron. Right. So they knew the properties of this stuff way before that they were. So to me, it just doesn't make sense, other than the fact that they were actively pursuing the old world. The entire old world mythos and idea is a callback to an earlier age. And you could see that all throughout the Mediterranean. They're all calling back to this origin point. And it was a constant, looking backwards to get the secrets of the old world. That's what they were interested in. And so, I mean, like, this is a short video about the smelting of iron, and it's like, you just got to think it through. This would be much easier than depending on iron or depending on bronze being imported, but they were still preferential to that bronze. So this is a short one. Let's see. Yeah.
The reset button, turning back our clock to the beginning of humanity, is slowly building our way back up to the modern age, starting from the Stone Age, working our way into the Bronze Age. At this point, we've covered many of the important inventions made during this era: bronze smelting and casting, written language, math and numbers, agriculture, and the wheel. Now in this video, we work our way to the next age, the Iron Age. Everything we use comes from 8,000 generations of collective innovation and discovery. But could an average person figure it all out themselves and work their way from the Stone Age to today? That's the question we're exploring. Each week, I try to take the next step forward in human history. My name is Andy, and this is How to Make Everything. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next step in this journey. In today's video, we're smelting iron at some intense heats, where potentially burning off some of your hair is just part of the game.
you're going to lose your arm hair. It's almost a rite of passage at this point. By the time the new one grows back, it's time to do another iron smelt.
As you get older and into your 30s, you start to get more and more concerned on if that hair is going to grow back, as 2 out of 3 guys will experience male pattern baldness by the time they're 35. If that's something you're concerned about, then you might be interested in today's sponsor. Keeps offers the only 2 FDA-approved hair loss. Middle of the Bronze Age, around 2000 BCE in central Anatolia. But large-scale adoption of iron and the full transition into the Iron Age wouldn't occur until around 1200 BCE. In one of our last videos, we provided one theory on the cause of the transition from bronze to iron, with expensive wars in the Mediterranean destabilizing major civilizations and disrupting the crucial trade route of tin and copper ore. Both metals, especially tin, are relatively rare on the Earth and need to be traded over vast distances.
That's why we had an Iron Age, is because the Bronze Age collapsed.
The primary initial advantage of iron over bronze to fuel this transition was that his ore was much more plentiful. I'll let author Lewis Dartnall explain further when I got to talk to him last year at his lab in London.
Iron is actually a much more common metal than copper or tin that you need for bronze. So once we worked out how to smelt iron out of iron ore, we weren't so limited by the metal that we could use. It wasn't just the elites and warriors. It was basically society as a whole could then use.
He's just making my points for me.
Because iron ore is much more widely distributed around the world. Something I talk about in my new book, Origins. All of that iron that we have mined throughout human history comes from a particular quirky period in our planet's history when literally the entire planet rusted. There was a lot of iron dissolved in the seawater, and then something happened and that iron rusted and just dumped down onto the seafloor to build all of the iron ore deposits that we mine today. And that particular event is called the Great Oxidation Event. Oxygen started building up in the atmosphere, which rusted the iron, was oxidized, and then was deposited down as iron ore. So it was very primitive cyanobacteria cells growing, photosynthesizing in the sea that created that event.
So before that, the iron was just like in the water?
It was dissolved in the water, but as soon as a little bit of oxygen started building up in the atmosphere and the seawater, it oxidized the iron, and oxidized iron cannot remain dissolved, and then precipitated down. Sure. Basically, those then form the iron ore deposits around the world that we've been mining for thousands of years again.
It's because of iron's propensity to oxidize when exposed to air, the native iron is incredibly rare. Unlike native copper, which we previously were able to explore and mine in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Oh, really?
The earliest use of iron, however,
was from
native metal iron.
Why would you go there?
Not from this planet.
Why, space sword?
Several examples of early iron weapons and tools are found to be of meteoric in origin. This offered too small of a source to make any significant impact. The actual smelting of iron itself was a major roadblock that prevented any mass adoption of iron. But it's a discovery that didn't come out of nowhere. So let's trace the path that we followed to be able to achieve this next milestone. Starting at the birth of humanity, the first step was learning how to master stone tools, allowing more complex tools to be made, and eventually learning how to process raw clay into ceramics, one of the most crucial discoveries made by humans. Then source the first form of metal used by humans, native copper, and learn the properties of metals and how to shape and use them. Next, we learn the concept of smelting, where you can turn plentiful ores into the raw metal, using what was likely the first smelted metal, lead, that required nothing more than a hot fire. Then we applied this concept to copper ore and tin ore to alloy into bronze, using blowpipes to raise the heat of the fire to the necessary temperature. Then we also experimented with a draft kiln, allowing the temperatures to be maximized even further with a cob tower that allows a natural draft to form. Iron, however, requires an even higher temperature, with raw ore smelting into iron at around 2300 degrees Fahrenheit. To achieve these temperatures, we need one more technology unlocked.
Just a quick note. So the barbarians that first sacked Rome in the 300s BC had iron chainmail as armor. Right? The barbarians had iron armor. The elites had bronze. And so there was a very different perspective there. They were using something far more plentiful and far less elitist.
Bellows, which pumps large quantities of air to heat charcoal, maximizing our temperature to just high enough to smelt iron. Most often they are made using leather, a technology we also recently unlocked. The earliest evidence of bellows are pot bellows. Ceramic bowls, they're covered with leather and can be pumped up and down to force air into the kiln. Lauren got ours started by building the bottom shape of the bowl with cob on top of a mound of sand.
Wow.
We we have got to the point where literally
It
anyone
broke.
can build a
It
fully
broke.
It did break. It doesn't take much. I mean, you really have to know how to use clay, and clay was ubiquitous. I think that's a good point to stop at. But they go over the process of making clay into these bellows, and then using the bellows to heat that fire up, and then the iron drips down into a usable form from the top all the way through the fire into the bottom, and then you destroy the kiln. It's all destroyed at that point.
Yeah, that's why they don't find them.
Exactly. You're pulling out the bloom iron, and so it doesn't leave a trace. If they were using iron, I think it was a way of
One
way
of
of looking at the world.
I think it's one of the first images that you find in Squire and Davis the book. I can't remember. Monuments of the Ancient Mississippi, something like that. You'll find that on that place there are huge amount of documented material showing that there were iron kilns at the entrance of that site, several of them. That was one of the things that they destroyed utterly and denied even more than any copper or writing language or anything, because they were completely eradicated. I think there were also iron kilns in Poverty Point, for instance,
Right.
and there is no trace of them. Whatever existed, it was utterly destroyed because they couldn't have iron. So, and what you're showing is basically what I've been saying for so long, is after you destroy the kiln, because you have to destroy it to take the iron that you just smelted, there is nothing left. There is no charged earth. There is nothing, because the bellows, the skin that is used to do the bellows, you take with you and you reuse, but you have to remake the whole furnace again to produce more iron. So it leaves no traces. It leaves no traces.
And if have you guys ever done any gold panning?
You have to explain what that is, because I don't know.
Gold panning is where you go into the stream and you're picking up sediment, you're putting it in your pan, and then you're shifting out all of the heaviest stuff.
Oh, like finding
You're
gold
getting rid of-
stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So gold panning, you end up with mountains and mountains of iron filings everywhere. Now, that's because the iron is heavy sediment, and you find the gold inside of the heavier sediment. So anytime you're panning for gold, you can actually take all of the iron filings, just take a magnet over your whatever's left in that gold pan after sifting out all the lighter elements like the silica and everything, and you'll find you've got tons and tons of iron everywhere. In the swamps, again, he talked about the bacteria feeding off of the rust. In the swamps, they would have these massive clumps of iron around the edges where the springs would feed the swamps. And going around and picking that up is how they would get their bloom iron. It's something that low people do. It's not something high elitists do. High elitists are doing mining operations, whereas the low people are scrounging around inside of these swamps, right? So the entire process of creating iron is very different from how you get the Bronze Age, the Chalcolithic Age, is because the mining operations had to be done on a wide scale with lots and lots of people. Whereas if you're just digging through the swamps and everything else, you could be, any sort of lowly, serf at that point. And we know that they had a very strict hierarchical structure going on back in those times. So to me, it seems like iron was intentionally left out of the equation.
Sure.
Because they were marking their journey back from sort of this, Atlantean culture.
Basically,
They couldn't recalc them anymore.
what seemed to have happened is something happened in the UP area that stopped that source of copper, constant source of copper, of ships coming and going and so on. Something happened that stopped
They
that.
collapse.
And when you go, and people that have been critics of the papers that we've done about copper, they say, "Oh, look at this! This is 1000 BC, and right on the edge of the end of the Copper Age, and we see that for instance, from around the Don Annas Park, where there are that Carthaginian huge harbor that they found, but with lidar. They were from that area. They were sending the copper ingots that used to be this big, with 4 legs that look like they call it like they look like an animal skin, because they were this big, and they are now sending discs this big.
Mm.
That's what they are producing instead of those copper. It's still called copper ingots for some reason. Academics didn't make the distinction. To me, these are copper discs, like this thin. And when they test it, they see that they are putting any scrap that they have, and they are sending him all the way to the Balkans, where supposedly the Balkans were a copper industry, right? And they're sending it all the way to the north, to Russia, to Norway. These discs from that area appear everywhere. Why? Because that was one ancient hub. Because the copper was not distributed also equally. It was being sold by South England, Don Annas Park, and Cyprus. Those were the hubs where from the copper was being distributed everywhere. So they were receiving
the sea hubs. That's very important. This is not overland trade when it comes to copper. It's over the sea trade when it comes to the whole Bronze Age.
Look, they are defending a place like Cyprus. That the name itself means copper. It's what the word means. They are defending that was a hub of copper and mining and distributing through the whole area of the Mediterranean and even North Africa, Near East, and so on. However, we know from the slag piles that were taken from those mines, they have a top maximum of 35 tons of copper. And yet we find ships like the Uluburum that they say came from there, and the Uluburum itself has 10 tons of copper in it. And they don't allow us to test the copper because we'll find the level purities are much higher than what can be obtained by the types of ore that exist on copper. And they say, oh, but we tested the tin and the tin comes from there. Yeah, but you didn't test the copper. Right. So how can a place that produces 35 tons have hundreds of ships going around the Mediterranean carrying 10 tons of copper? Where did the copper came from? Right. And so my point is
that brings us right back to today, where it seems apparent that we have the kakistocracy global elite in control.
It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing.
I'm saying they're all lying to withhold resources to control people's birth to death.
Because if you follow what Headless was saying, they knew from reports of travelers way before Columbus that there were way before 4000 BC, probably from 6000 BC. They knew that there were these huge amounts of that metal, but they have no function for it. But all of a sudden, it came the market of starting producing things out of bronze, and people wanted to buy bronze and wanted to buy copper. It's shiny, it looks almost like gold. It produces good materials. You can work with it. You can do shovels. It's good for the earth. It's conductive, so on and so forth. If I'm not saying that they knew it was conductive back then, but I'm assuming they might. They're not stupid. And
if it was part of the old world, and the old world had that technology, it's magical.
When
the whole system, go ahead.
Just sorry. So when these people started mining for copper and producing things out of copper from ore, someone on this hub, South England, Don Annas Park next to Cadiz, and Cyprus, somehow this elite knew, I know where there's lots of copper that I don't have to mine with antler picks. They were mining with antler picks. So try and grab an antler pick and go to a mountain and break the mountain with the antler pick. Okay? Do that, please. And tell me how you can take out 100,000 tons of copper with antler picks. So someone knew, I know where there's lots of that stuff. We don't have to do anything to it. It's the purest. You can even put some impurities in it and produce more material from the material that we're receiving. More so, it melts at half the temperature that we need for the ore. And if it is sulfidic ore, that most of the sources were, you have to roast it first and then smelt it, which there are no trees to do that. There aren't. You couldn't do that, right?
It's the perfect artificial scarcity. And speaking of which, I got to get going because I got another thing coming up. But
okay.
Thank you guys. This has been a great
Guys, peace,
episode.
everybody.
Till next week, then.
Thank you for sharing those pictures. It's always great. I mean, people have to expand those imaginations. You know, that's sort of what we're trying to.
And if there's someone near that, take pictures for us.
Absolutely. If you're in France, get in the southern part of France and look at this place. What was it called again?
Fontainebleau. Let me see.
Fontainebleau.
No, just give me a second. And I know you're in a rush, but give me a second to go back to that article so I can see the title. Or you can click the link on and see it immediately.
Yeah. Let me see. Private. There we go. It's called The Hidden Chronicle of Fontainebleau.
Fontainebleau. That's the name of the park.
Deciphering the Forgotten Legacy of the Ancient Land. If you guys can go to Fontainebleau in France, the southern part of France, definitely hit us up. Man, we want to talk to you. We want to see those pictures.
Yeah.
But thank you guys. This has been another great
Thank you.
episode. We will get back to it next week. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Peace.